Is there an emotional content to this debate that we haven't really talked about a lot during this program?
Well, absolutely. I mean, there is certainly we're in a very different time than 20 years, 30 years, or even generations that emigrated to this country. We're talking about linkages to homeland that are much closer because of communication and travel and so on. And so there's a whole aspect there around maintaining family linkages and heritage that I think it's critical. But I do have a problem with the issue of literacy being attributed to specifically the learning of English. We live in a city in the District of Columbia where 33% of the adults are functionally illiterate, and those are not all immigrants. Those are native English speakers for whom their literacy rate is very low. Those children are as much at risk if we're not dealing with the literacy rate of adults. So again, for me, it's how is it that we're looking at a policy across the board, and I think your message about community schools and opening the school doors to the broader community is absolutely the right way to go. But in the discussion, we falter by making it a segregated discussion.
Well, one thing that is very unsatisfying for me as a reporter, when I look, I'm outside the educational world, but I look in at it, and I see bilingual education debated in a binary way. Yes, no.
Exactly.
When the approaches, as Don hinted at, might be very different for a 5-year-old coming through the door speaking another language, as opposed to a 14-year-old who has already had years of formal instruction in some other country's school system and is literate in another language. How you would approach those two students would seem to me, given the way people learn language, the speed at which they do it at different ages, would have to be totally different, yet we look at it in this binary yes, no kind of way. Now you mentioned that you started in 4th grade, right?
Right.
Speaking no English.
No English.
Is the approach that would have worked best for someone that age different from somebody who comes into a Head Start program at 4 years old?
Well, you talk about the kindergarten child who may have come out of a household or home where Spanish or whatever other language is dominant, and the child doesn't speak English when they come into the kindergarten. The key for that child is that child ready for kindergarten? And English is learning the language is not the readiness skill only. The readiness skill is literacy. Regardless of literacy in one language or the other, building vocabulary, building the social and emotional skills for that child to be ready for kindergarten. And I'd venture to say if a child walks into kindergarten only speaking their home language, but has received the readiness skills that child needs, the access to quality early care and education, that child's language learning in English will be much quicker. Because that child has been given the tools. Language is not a content piece. It's simply a way in which you express the content and the knowledge you already have. And so if we've done a good job in early childhood, I don't think it really matters whether that child walks into kindergarten speaking English or not, assuming that the system is in place to help them make that transition.
There are school systems all over the country that have to deal with kids arriving as young teenagers in Houston, in New York, in Los Angeles. And the dropout rate for those kids is horrifying. We do very little to keep these kids in school and on track and eventually get them to grade level English instruction in various pieces of content. How do we craft an approach for a 15-year-old that's different from a 5-year-old?
It's a challenge, and you really can't take two 15-year-olds that come into a given school district and treat them the same, because there's no telling what quality of formal education they bring. Those are absolutely challenges that really need to be decided by good educators on a case-by-case basis.
So what one of the reasons you just hit on why high school teachers are so upset in some ways with No Child Left Behind, because they understand that. And what we essentially have to do, at least I started as a high school teacher and a lawyer, where I've at least gotten to on this issue, is you have to have, and I hate using this term, but you have to actually have an individual education program for kids in that kind of at-risk kids. Because if you don't do that, there's not going to be any real program that's going to be helpful. If you put a child like that in some kind of, take New York, Regents level course, that and a child could be incredibly good content-wise, but not have, as BB said, the acquisition of English, so not have the vehicle by which to take those tests. The child's going to fail even when the child has incredible proficiency in terms of content. So part of, I think, the challenge in terms of the next iteration of the federal education law is how do we create a safety net that doesn't provide an excuse so that you have one level of standard, but how do we provide a safety net then that actually then lifts all boats so that we end up dealing with, instead of having kids drop out, who are the most at risk?
Ron, you have to fight the political battle at the same time. An individual education program is a great thing, and it's wonderful, and every kid should have one. But at the same time, advocates of bilingual education have to fight the rearguard action that is intertwined with concerns about American culture and the fate of English and the future of immigration and all these other things that have nothing to do with fifth grade English class.
It's a very emotional issue, and I think that one of the main concerns that I have is that these students that come into school, whether they're 14 or 3, don't have advocates for them. Their parents cannot be, because of language issues, because of work issues, cannot be the advocate. They are not informed themselves about what the best way of proceeding with these kids are. So they don't have advocates. And on the other hand, the schools don't have the political will to be able to or the resources to be able to develop those types of individualized programs for young people that they should be able to develop. So how do you balance the will of the parents and the information that parents have and the involvement of parents as advocates for the children with the political will of the schools with the federal mandate? And I think the way we have done it in the last 5 or 6 years has been with the federal mandate. That has changed this issue drastically around the country. And I think it's going to continue to change it.
It's now time for one more break. Please stay tuned. Destination Casa Blanca will be back with more.